When he needs to make himself visible is like what he did with Moses and the burning bush. And let me tell you what he did for me. Along my journey story that you'll hear more about in December, when I had the aneurysm rupture, amen, I was going through in my mind, that's how my family kind of figured out something's wrong. Amen. I was having big headaches, and they were telling me something was wrong with me, and I was telling them, no, something wrong with y'all. So we got to the hospital, and they figured out I had a brain bleed. And so, to make a long story short, we went into emergency surgery. And you know how they put the gas mask over your face and they tell you to count back from 100? I wasn't thinking right, y'all. Amen? But I had enough sense. When they put the gas mask on my face and they said, count back from 100, I said, Our Father, which art in heaven. I got halfway through my prayer before the lights in that room dimmed, and then bright lights came back up. Amen? And I was in the same room, but my back was all the way up against the ceiling. My back, my legs, my head, everything, and I could see me down on the floor. And standing next to me were these two big, tall, white, like the ceiling had to stretch for them to get in there. And it was such a pure white. I looked for it in fabric, I looked for it in paint, and it's just a white that ain't down here. It ain't here. We saw it the first time when it snowed in Nebraska, and it had snowed all night, and it was snow everywhere. And I looked outside, and it was like God brought back to my remembrance that white. I said, there it is. You can almost see through it. And that whiter than snow, that came back. But that was the white, and they were both standing there. One was standing like almost kneeled and bowed in prayer, and the other one had a little gold cup in its hand, and it was like leaning over and pouring it in my mouth the whole time. This little bowl never emptied. And so eventually I heard the ding on the elevator, and I opened my eyes. They went away. Surgery was over. Amen? They had already told my family to clear out the lobby because there was people everywhere. People from St. Luke were calling, or now across the community. It was so many people, amen, trying to check on me. They were telling them, don't waste your parking money. She's going to be in a coma for a couple of days. She may have to go through extensive rehab, learn how to walk and talk all over again, the whole gamut. And I came out when I heard that ding, my eyes opened, and I heard the doors open to the elevator, and my little sister ran over, and she said, hey, everybody, it's Tanya. Because they had me wrapped up, and I looked, I said, Tasha, what you doing here? And she jumped back, and she said, you know my name. Because they had told her, all of this bad stuff was going to happen. But I thank God for his hand. Because destiny had not been fulfilled yet. Had not been. So God took me all the way back to the thoughts of where I thought time had passed me up. I really said, Lord, I'll accept the fact I did this to me. I waited, and this is my punishment for waiting. I accepted that. So God had to back the train all the way back up to my thoughts, because your thoughts fuel your words. Amen? Your words drive your action. You said for a minute, you're going to end up doing it. Amen? And then your actions repeated become a habit. Right? Habits over and over again, people just know you. That's your character. And sooner or later, that's your destiny. So God had to take me all the way back to my thoughts and get that thought out of my mind that it was too late. Amen? And here's how he did it. After that surgery, he just kept presenting it over and over to me again, and he kept bringing back Moses and the Shekinah glory. And here's why I look at it. God will show up when it seems like it's too late. Amen? He'll create a scenario that man can't touch. Just so he'll let you know, amen, that it's him. So get into God's presence. Moses went to the mountain to get into God's presence. So if you are in the mountain, on the mountain with God, you are in his presence, look for what you can't explain. That's God. Amen? I can't explain why. Amen. My doctors, when I would call them and tell them, I'm I'm having headaches, I can't feel the side of my face, and they were like, good. I said, that's not good. And they tell me, well, the other patients who got a clip 2 inches in the middle of their head, they can't talk to us. Amen? If they're still alive, they don't have the sense you got. So I had to start thinking, okay, God, there's purpose behind what you did for me. Right? Now, if we're on the mountaintop and we're in God's presence, we need to look for those things that we cannot explain. Why? Because his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts.